The Fox City Score chapter and WHBY are pleased to bring you BizTalk, a chance for you to hear from entrepreneurs and professionals as they share their experiences from starting to sustaining growth. Learn the skills needed for your business to be successful. If you missed anything, you can catch the BizTalk podcast at biztalkwithscore.com. And now from the Myron Construction Studio, it's BizTalk on WHBY.
Good morning and welcome to BizTalk with Score. BizTalk is brought to you by the Fox City Score chapter, and we'll talk more about that chapter later in the show. I'm Terry Pinch, one of the hosts this week, and joining me as co-host is Bob Molitor. How are you this week, Bob?
Hey, great, Terry. Good morning. Glad to see you.
Good to have you here. We're going to actually be talking to a client that Bob used to work with, and they got a pretty great story. They were on the show about 4 years ago, and we wanted to talk to them about how things have progressed and where they're going and where they're heading for the future. They've done a very great job of starting this business. So anyhow, we're going to be talking to Smoky Lake Maple Products and the owners, Angela and Jim Schumacher. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Terry. Thanks for having us back.
So before we get started, into the new stuff, we want to really go back and give people a history of the business because it's been a pretty great story. So let's talk about how you got into, well, first, even before that, let's talk about what you two were doing before you started Smoky Lake. So what are your backgrounds and how did that lead to maple syrup?
Well, I was a licensed plumber in Wisconsin prior to this business, and that really had nothing to do with us getting going on this business, except that I had a lot of mechanical knowledge, and Angela was the one that got it going when she decided she wanted to try making maple syrup ourselves on some land that I had owned up in the UP of Michigan.
Well, I was in advertising before this, so I think our backgrounds really lent themselves well to starting this business. My background and Jim's background really went hand in hand. Him with his, engineering skills and just having incredible craftsmanship, understanding how things can come together three-dimensionally and all that fun stuff. And my understanding of communicating these awesome features to other people and taking a product and making it into a brand. So yeah, we worked really well together.
Why did you want to get into making maple syrup?
Oh, I wanted to do it my whole life, but we never had maple trees growing up. So when I started dating Jim and he had maple trees, I was like, bingo. All right. Here's my opportunity.
This is the guy I'm going to marry.
Oh my gosh. I'm so in love with this man. So, yeah. So we, tapped trees together and kind of fell in love with it together, which was kind of a cool thing to, do this adventure from the beginning together.
But jumping from a hobby into a business, that's a big leap. How did that come about?
Well, that started because especially for a hobby maple producer, the equipment available for sale to get someone going into that endeavor was generally poor quality. It was a little bit inaccessible. So it seemed natural to me to build it ourselves. And so every year we were making syrup at a larger scale, so we needed bigger equipment. And year after year, we were building our own equipment to suit our growing maple syrup production. And it just kind of naturally flowed into a business of selling the equipment because there was a need for it, a need for high quality American-made maple equipment.
Interesting. When you talk to you guys and I met you guys, I think, okay, you're a small company and you're selling a couple of this, a couple of that's here, a couple of smokers here, a couple of boilers and stuff. And I found out, you really have taken this from a hobby to an actual full-time pretty good scale up business with some serious dollars in revenue. So, I mean, from that standpoint, what made you believe that you could go from hobby farm, from selling a few of the equipment that you needed for your own maple syrup trees to selling nationwide or whatever the case may be?
Well, there's really a need for it in the market, I would say. Wouldn't you, Jim? There's like a big hole that was just begging to be filled.
In a lot of cases, I'm glad I was as young as I was when I started, because I didn't recognize any boundaries and I didn't recognize risk the way a lot of people did. And I was extremely aggressive. I wanted to be not just the best, but I wanted to be the biggest. At least regionally, I wanted to be the biggest producer. And I really had a lot of fire for it. I was extremely aggressive going into it, and it grew the business very quickly. And the demand for the equipment, it was always hard to quench. We were always backlogged. We never had enough help. We couldn't ever keep up with demand. So it kind of came together naturally that way.
Yeah, we did all kinds of crazy things in the beginning. I don't know if you want to say it's because we were naive or just because we were tenacious, but we were in our 20s and we were buying bulk sheets of stainless, but we were still working out of our home garage. So in order to store those stainless steel sheets, we had to build these scaffoldings, supports on the outside of our garage wall, so that the weight of all that stainless wouldn't pull out a wall.
And we were in a residential house with just a medium-sized garage, really. And yeah, like Angela said, we were buying truckloads of stainless steel, and we had to lean it up against the wall. So then we had to build a big superstructure on the outside of the building just to hold all of that. It's kind of a crazy thing to be going on in a residential neighborhood. And, we did have some run-ins with, code enforcement agents and things like that. It was growing so quick. And I look back at that, and now that I'm in my 40s, I would just so love to see, a couple of 20-year-olds doing that. I would get off on that, looking around the neighborhood and hearing, shears and punches running into the night. I would just love to see that. And that's what we were doing.
How did you know what equipment to buy? And is that coming from your plumbing background, or did you have to go out and look around and see what to do?
Well, so I've always been extremely mechanically minded, and a lot of that stuff came natural for me. I played with Legos when I was little. I was soldering by the time I was 4. My dad allowed me to lose his tools, and he was supportive of that. I guess when I ran into challenges in, processing methods and stuff, I guess I figured it out by doing research, maybe online. I guess I don't know. That stuff generally always has come pretty natural for me.
Okay. So you started out really looking at the products that were available and thinking and knowing you could do better and making those products. But how did your side step in doing the advertising and marketing for these products at that time?
Sure. So, I was working at the ad agency, so I kind of stepped in kind of slowly. Jim quit his job before I quit my job, but I guess it started out slowly, like, Angela, we need a logo, and then, oh my gosh, we really need a website. And then, we need instruction guides, and we need, all these different things to communicate. We need a Facebook page. There's all kinds of communication pieces that were needed, and I just really enjoyed working on too. So slowly it's become bigger and bigger, and as we've increased our product line, there's been, those needs have multiplied that way too.
were you pretty confident when you left your job, Angela, or was the business at a point where you knew it was going to make it, or was it a nervous, tough decision?
Oh, I had a lot of confidence in the business, but I think anytime you quit the security of a full-time job and you take on all the risks and everything yourself, I mean, there's a little bit of, I guess there's a little bit of nervousness. You're jumping into something that's a little bit different and unknown, but it was, I always tell myself, is it really nervousness or is it excitement? Because those two things can be confused sometimes, right? So it's probably excitement, not nervousness.
So let's jump into the building in Hilbert. I'm assuming it was to the point where you couldn't construct things in the garage anymore. It was getting too busy. But how did you go about deciding you needed space, and why Hilbert, and how did that all come together?
Yeah, so by the time that came around, we were working out of 2 residential garages. We had multiple storage units storing finished parts and supplies. Shipping materials took up 1 whole storage unit. So I had always been afraid of debt. I was raised in such a way where you just don't take on debt. And that's what probably took so long. By the time we moved out of the garages, there were 6 full-time people. And we built the building in Hilbert. We looked around in different industrial parks, but Hilbert had the chairman was a very just friendly, warm character, and they were in a TIF district. And we never needed traffic. It wouldn't have helped us at all to be on a main highway anywhere. That kind of exposure didn't mean anything to us. We had people coming from out of state to wherever we were that didn't, the exposure on a highway didn't play into it. So we couldn't be happier where we are. And, we're on a little, on the end of a court in an industrial park in the country. It just has a really good feel to it. So
how'd you fund it?
Oh, we did, for a short period of time. We borrowed some money for the building. 9 months after we put up the main building, which is about 8,000 square feet, we added a showroom. And then it was shortly after we did that, we added a huge warehouse to the property.
But I think maybe what you're asking is about the TIF district. Is that right? Like, because that was part of the funding too.
Yeah.
The TIF, so the village of Hilbert, helped us, like, being in this TIF district, we got the land and part of our construction costs were covered. So it was a great program. And
one thing that we see with people going into business, when they come to school, they always say, "Oh, geez, I'm afraid of debt. I don't want to take on debt. If I have debt, I want to pay it off right away." And that's one thing you have to fully grasp, that if you're going to be successful in business, debt is not your enemy. It will work in your favor. If I'm going to borrow money at, let's say, 6% now, 8%, well, if I can get a return on that investment of 20% or 12%, I'm making money. So we want people to think about debt as their friend rather than their worry areas where they're constantly focused on making checkbook decisions, on trying to pay down debt and not thinking about growth. And I think you guys have understood that once you started seeing some success come in. That's not going to be the worst thing in the world.
Oh, absolutely. If we would have built a bigger building sooner, we would have been working so much more efficiently. It was, that's when we started making extremely big strides. That's when we came into the attention of all of our competitors. I mean, that made a big difference when we had the space to work efficiently. Absolutely. And an official place for customers to come and have displays on hand. It was, that was a huge step. I wish we would have done it sooner. Absolutely.
Well, you make those checkbook decisions when you're first starting a business, and you can't kick yourself. Hindsight is crystal clear, but you can't beat yourself up for it. You have to do what looks best for short term. But then, we always think big, start small, but think big. And I think finally you guys realized, maybe a little too late, but all of a sudden, boom, you got this nice new building. You got product to display. You got the access where you're not moving things around from warehouse to warehouse to warehouse. and off you go. Much more profitable on that end.
So we're at a point where we're going to take our first break. You're listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We're glad you joined us this morning. Our guests this morning are Jim and Angela Schumacher with Smoky Lake Maple Products. Before I continue our conversation with Jim and Angela, I'd like to tell you about Fox City Score. Your local Fox City chapter supports the 8-county area from Appleton to Fond du Lac and Wapaka to Montello. We have around 35 volunteers, each an expert in their field, offering entrepreneurs no-cost and confidential mentoring. Areas of expertise include IT, social media, marketing, cash flow, strategic planning, workflow, retail, best practices, and many others. In order to register for a no-cost confidential mentoring session and learn more about the Fox City Score chapter, visit our website at score.org/Fox Cities. You can learn more about how the Score chapter can assist you with starting and or growing your business, and you can complete an application for a mentoring session. Simply complete the online form and submit it to Score. Within a few days, the Score mentor will be contacting you to set up a meeting. Remember, Score is no cost and offers experts who can offer you assistance in many different areas. To get started, visit our website at score.org/Fox Cities. To support small business people, Fox City Score is always looking for new mentors. If you have experience that you'd like to share with others, we'd love to talk to you. We welcome volunteers with experience in all aspects of business and offer training to help you prepare to be a mentor. Go to score.org/Fox Cities, click on the volunteer button, and fill out a short application. We'll get back to you to explain more. Thanks again for joining us on Biz Talk. And now back to our show with the Smoky Lake Maple Products team. So, Angela and Jim, let's continue where we left off at the break. So you put in this building in Hilbert and you built it in phases. Let's talk a little bit more about how this showroom made a difference for you and how you're using that.
Yeah, it's so nice having just an open door where customers can come see us and visit us and actually see the equipment, and we're able to do demos here. It's been a game changer, I'd say, wouldn't you, Jim?
Yeah, we've met with Bob numerous times over the years, and from start to finish, there's an application to work with Score. It's been wonderful.
What I like to see is that with the showroom, I always think image is everything on your business, and that showroom just sparkles when you come in. When you look at your product, say, "Holy cow! This is not backyard. This is not garage equipment. This is high-end, real high-quality, professionally made equipment." And you've got numerous units to show it. It really gives your image that a business a step up in image. I think any client, any customer that walks in there say, "Whoa, these guys are pretty serious about this business." I think I would feel comfortable buying product from them. And that's exactly what you try to accomplish there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and with the showroom, that kind of started right from the plans on the showroom. When we designed that, we had it's full of windows. There's natural light. There's exposed wood beams and cedar walls. It just gives a feeling of a nice warm building that you might find in the backwoods. It's meant to feel comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not an Amazon warehouse. We're we're doing high craftsmanship here.
And is there a community of maple syrup producers, the hobby producers that like to interact a lot with each other in businesses such as yours? Has that been developing over time too?
Yeah, and that's been really neat to see. And part of our showroom is that it is a working sugar house. So we actually have a cupola and a place to hook up an evaporator, and we actually run evaporators in the showroom during the season. And that draws in very big groups of like-minded people. And it's common to see, like when we had our open house recently, we had a showroom full of people, maybe 80 some people in there, and groups of people just visiting with one another during during that open house. It's really a neat community.
Okay. So, you also mentioned the warehouse. So you built a large warehouse there. Was that the third phase of construction at the site?
Correct. Yep.
And how has that helped you in terms of servicing your customers better?
Well, since we started, the biggest challenge has been to have product on hand when people need it. A lot of people, and generally most people are this way, they don't think about buying a piece of equipment until they need it. Most of our customers don't have the foresight or the willingness to put down money on a piece of equipment during the off season. When winter turns into spring, that's when they start thinking about maple syrup. That's when they want to buy an evaporator or a filter press. So the warehouse has allowed us to build up inventory seasonally so that we're ready for that.
And also just buying, we have a lot of different parts and boxes and materials. So we have to go somewhere with all that, and it's nice to have a safe spot for it. But I suppose I'm the same way. I've never bought a kayak or a bicycle during winter. I always wait until I need it. And our industry is no different. So we need to be prepared each season.
That's the Amazon way. Everybody expects that if I order today, I'll have it tomorrow. And
yeah.
You guys have the benefit of your products are not custom made for each individual. So I think you can stock, certain units are going to sell every year. So in the off season, you get to build those.
Yeah,
stuff, so you need the warehouse space, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. We allow a certain number of parameters that the customer can select from. So there may be some assembly still required, but we're able to do as much of the prep work ahead of time to make, finishing out those and rounding out an order and finishing out an order, it really expedites that if we do a little bit of work ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we're at the point for our second break. And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about all the events and activities over the last 4 years and some of the things they've been working on. You're listening to BizTalk with Score on WHBY, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to BizTalk with Score. We're talking to Jim and Angela Schumacher from Smoky Lake Maple Products. Before we get back to Jim and Angela, I want to talk a little bit about a couple educational opportunities that are coming up. If you go to the SCORE website, score.org/Fox Cities, you'll see a workshops and events tab up at the top. If you click on that site, you're going to find hundreds of webinars, both national and local, some live events coming up, some courses, a lot of different things you can do, most of which are at no cost. But there's two in particular I want to mention, live events that are coming up. Both are on April 30th. And the first one is Accelerate Business Growth with the Help of Artificial Intelligence. And that's on April 30th. It's at 10 o'clock Central Time. But if you're wondering how artificial intelligence can help a small business, that is the purpose of this course, just to give you an overview of what's there and maybe get some understanding of how it could fit into your business. So we hear an awful lot about AI or artificial intelligence right now, and this is an opportunity to understand how it can help small business. And the second one is called Securing Your Small Business in a Work from Any Place World. So that's also on April 30th, and you'll find that on the website. But for many small businesses who have employees traveling and are wondering about how to make sure they're keeping their site secure from hackers and not having people get access to the records, this is an opportunity to go and learn more about that as well. So those are two that are out there among many others. So again, go to score.org/Fox Cities and click on the workshops and events tab. So now we're going to turn back to Jim and Angela. And the last time we talked, it was April of 2020. It was one of our first shows back after we'd taken 3 weeks off when COVID hit, and we weren't sure how we were even going to do the radio show. And had a great conversation about a lot of the things we covered now and covered in the first segment. But how did the pandemic impact you, and how did you work your way through that time?
I think we had some reduced hours mandated for a little while. But overall, we just kind of worked through it. We were considered supporting agriculture, so there weren't too many.
Yeah, we didn't get shut down. I think we did split shifts to keep, because at the time nobody knew what this thing was, and we did split shifts, and just this thing, the pandemic hit like during our busy season, toward the tail end of our very busy season, and I think we did split shifts. The biggest thing that I feel we saw was major inflation in raw materials and difficulty in finding those raw materials. That was substantial. That was a big difference.
It suddenly took, sometimes, 10 times longer to get materials in. Everything, you had to plan ahead a lot further, and so.
Did you have to carry more inventory of raw materials? Or could you?
Probably not. We had to source, the lifeblood material, our stainless steel sheet metal. We had to find a completely different source for that because the mill we were buying it from was just not able to fill orders on time. It would have been detrimental if we didn't find another source for it. And that was a permanent change for us. We're still using that new source today.
So as you worked through the pandemic, one question I had as I thought about it was, do you think that was a time when over those couple of years when it brought more people into the hobby?
It's hard for us to measure. I've heard that this kind of thing, blew up during the pandemic, but it was timed at the same time when we brought on some extremely innovative small evaporators that really blew up the business. So it's hard to measure that if the pandemic, made a substantial difference or not, but it's not as though our demand has really fallen off, as people have settled down from the pandemic either. So it's pretty hard to measure that, but we were awfully busy.
Okay. So over those 4 years, how has the company grown? Has it been manageable? Has it been a test to meet all the demand? How have you been doing managing that?
Well, it's been very challenging. The business has been just an unbelievable source of stress from the start. And I feel that in the last 4 years, it has become so busy that we took at least a couple of years and just tried to make it more sustainable. Instead of adding a new product every year, we focused on mass production on those things and supporting those items. And just now we're just starting to get back into the mode of inventing and bringing new products again.
So a lot of the things you did early on were around making the equipment more efficient and effective. Have you been able to apply that to the processes in your manufacturing or warehouse? Is that a lot of what you were doing over the last few years?
Yeah, we've gotten really creative. Jim mentioned earlier that during the pandemic, a lot of material prices went up. So we had to find some creative ways to keep costs down. Like one example is we figured out a way in the way we package our evaporators to save shipping costs. So, finding, through problem solving and getting creative, finding ways to keep costs down without compromising any of our quality.
So, Jim, is there a time when you're doing all that you just start to think, I got to go back to innovating products and creating new ones rather than more efficient ones?
Well, it's, innovating is like my favorite thing. That's by far my favorite thing to do. I don't necessarily like handling shipping damage claims. I don't necessarily like dealing with, problems or, innovating is always on my mind. It's like the number one thing that drives me. And what defines our business is innovative, fuel efficient, high productivity maple equipment. And And that means saving fuel. That means saving time. And in the end, our equipment makes a better quality product. So that's kind of the driving force that we've always been focused on.
Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about something relatively new you've had for the last couple of years, and it's the Smoky Lake grants. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and what's that? What are you doing with that?
Yeah, we just launched that last week. So Smoky Lake Grants is reaching out to nonprofits such as nature centers and FFA groups and different therapy organizations who use maple events as part of their events that they do each year. So we are working with them, helping them expand their programs and, helping them reach out to their communities and share the love of maple.
Okay. And so what do the grants involve? Is that providing them equipment and training? Is that the type of thing you do with it?
Yep, we have maple specialists on staff that will work with them in training, but we also are trying to help give them financial aid and lower the bar to entry to upgrade their equipment so they can have good, high quality equipment for their programs.
So with that, before we get into the manufacturing side, just one other question on the whole part of what's happened over the last 4 years. You're still primarily selling to individual hobbyists, but you do have some businesses. And I noticed you're starting to sell to some distributors in Ontario as well. And being from Ontario is something that always interests me when I notice that. So how did you start doing that? Was that related more to just the issues of trying to sell from Wisconsin into Ontario, or was there another reason for it?
Ontario has always been a great supporter of our projects and what we're doing. I think you're from Ontario. How do you feel about Quebec?
I think I might be banned from this show if I say anything. I will say my favorite hockey team's from Quebec, but otherwise I won't say anything good. So
okay,
we'll leave it at that.
I know I don't want to say anything bad about Quebec. There's a lot of great things in Quebec, but it seems there's kind of like a tension sometimes between those two provinces. And, Ontario is just north of us. So we get a lot of outreach.
And the keystone of what she's saying is that most of our competition is in Quebec. Almost all of our competitors are Quebec based. So it seems, consistent that people from Ontario would rather work with a Wisconsin company than a Quebec company, and that suits us very, very well.
Yeah. And
I will just throw out
sorry.
No, go ahead.
We were so lucky to get the SBA award for Exporter of the Year a few years back. Yeah. So we've been trying to build on that by adding a distributor up there.
Yeah. And I will throw one caveat. I should point out that 2 of my daughters went to university in Montreal. So I do support, I shouldn't be too hard on it, but anyhow, there's a long history there. So now I do want to shift to manufacturing and shipping, because again, this to me is an incredible story. And Bob has talked about this before too, is you guys make great products. They're well manufactured. They're high quality. How did you learn how to do this? And we talked a little bit about it before, but how did you go from making a few things into having a consistent manufacturing process?
Well, that was just pure tenacity and like the ability to just grind through very difficult situations. It was very difficult. I have always been mechanically inclined, but I didn't know how to weld when we started building our maple equipment. I was in a way blessed to not know how our competitors were doing their products and how they were building their products, because I feel like when you see how something is done, it often blinds you from finding your own better way of doing it. And so since the beginning, we've produced our own welding tools. Of course, we use commercially made welders. We use Miller welders, but the actual tooling that's required to assemble and weld the products has been built in-house from the ground up. It's our very own concept. So that was a long process of development, and it was tenacity. Just thinking about it 24/7, thinking about it when I'm driving, thinking about it when I'm laying in bed, just trying to find better ways of getting it done. The manufacturing really was driven by tenacity.
But Jim, that sounds almost contrary. Let's say if I'm a manufacturer of a grill and I want to see how I compare to other manufacturers of grills, I'm going to go out and buy a Weber. I'm going to go out and buy a Stoke. I'm going to buy about half a dozen of these, and I'm going to see what I got to do to make mine better. Is that what you did not do to make your product more superior? Exactly.
Yep.
Which I can see makes it even harder to know how to beat the standards if you don't know what the standards are.
You understood the concepts of what would make this product work really well.
Yeah, since you used the product himself.
Yep, yeah, that I always understood. But a good example of what I'm talking about would be a float box, which is just a mechanical device that goes on almost every evaporator that monitors the depth of sap in the evaporator. And every maple manufacturer has a float box, but ours and most of them function about the same way. Ours, the way we designed it, by never having anything to design it from, ended up being more compact and more reliable than any other one on the market. And I really feel that in the case of that device, if my mind would have been clogged and blocked by seeing how other people were doing it, it would have really been an impediment to finding a better way.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you were building in the two garages, you were doing a lot of shipping of products, I'm assuming, between the two locations at times. Is that true?
No, actually, that was the two garages happened to be close enough together. They were only a few blocks apart. It was our garage and my best friend, who ended up being our first employee, the two garages. So it ended up being that all the fabrication was done in our garage and all the welding was done in the other garage. So all of the parts were, they were cut and profiled and formed in our place and then welded at the other one. And then typically moved to a shipping or to a storage unit.
Okay. And then as you go and you start to ship the product, as you're shipping direct to consumer, did you work with somebody, one of the FedExes or UPSs of the world, to figure out the best way of getting that product to the end consumer, or how did you go about that?
FedEx does have some resources that helps businesses package their products more efficiently or safer. But I think we got furthest by trial and error and testing different things and figuring out the limitations or where the weak points are in the shipping. So, what part of the product needs the most armoring, and, all of those things, were largely trial and error.
Yeah, shipping was an extremely painful teething area in the business too. It really was. And one eye opener for me out of many was how absolutely abusive a ground carrier is on packages.
Yeah. As we wrap up this segment, what does the future hold for you? Where do you think you're taking the company next?
Well, I'm hoping to expand our distribution. I feel like if we could have our equipment staged strategically, throughout all of the Northeast states, I think that would allow the business to expand very rapidly. So we're hoping to find a partner maybe that has that distribution, a similar distribution pattern already set up. And I think that would be a great next step for that.
Okay. So we'll come back to this conversation after our last break. You're listening to BizTalk with Score and WHBY, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to BizTalk. I would like to thank the sponsors and donors who bring BizTalk with Score to you each weekend. We couldn't present BizTalk without their generous support. Thank you to Hailing & Associates. Hailing & Associates helps small businesses and individuals not just prepare tax returns, but plan for taxes, thereby helping you minimize taxes for this year and beyond. Hailing & Associates, personal connection, positive results. A special thank you to the Business News for promoting our program in the biweekly business newspaper serving Northeast Wisconsin. If you aren't already subscribing to the Business News, you should. The paper is delivered biweekly and contains relevant and useful information about the business community in Northeast Wisconsin. And we would also like to recognize the David L. and Rita E. Nelson Fund within the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region for their generous donation of support in BizTalk and Fox City Score. And with that, let's turn back to Jim and Angela. And could you let our listeners know how they can find you, both online and in person?
Yeah, you can find us at smokylakemaple.com. And you're always welcome at our showroom in Hilbert, Wisconsin. We're here on 12th Street.
I guess we always like to ask, if there's a budding entrepreneurs listening to the program and you guys are successful. You've been through the grind. You've been through the successful. You say, oh, geez, if I would have known now what I wish I'd known that then. What did you learn that you say, gosh, I wish I would have known that when I started the business, whatever. What did we learn by your mistakes, or what did we learn by your experience that you've grinded through this whole 14 years in business?
I guess the biggest thing for me is to see challenges as opportunities instead of thinking, oh, this is it. This is a huge, detriment, really anytime, something challenging happens, you gotta look at it as an opportunity. Whether it be in manufacturing or even with customers. I mean, we've had, some of our best relationships that we have today with certain customers started out with them calling us up and being upset about something. But we were able to then take that as an opportunity and say, okay, well, let's fix this, or let's make this better, or, here's how we can help. And it turned into a great relationship. So, I guess as a business owner, I've had to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's a good thing. Being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Yeah. How about you, Jim? What do you think?
I think that, for me, it seems to me that all business owners, a byproduct of being a business owner is having sleepless nights. There seems to be always something to worry about. And I'm surprised that over the years, how often I was kept up by insignificant problems. And often if I just shared those problems with my crew, they helped to work them out. The things that were bothering me. We have some really tremendous people in the upper level of the company. And, just by sharing some of the bigger problems that are bothering me, they seem to work themselves out. And I wish I would have always done that instead of stew on it.
Yeah. And I think that pays kudos back to the employees that you're getting them involved with some, what they consider, and you consider some potential major decisions. I think that really wins them over as to be a more than an employee. They're part of the team.
Yeah.
Was there any time during these 14 years where you went to bed not sure if you were going to wake up and have a business to go to going forward?
I don't know if it was ever that extreme.
No, I never felt any doom whatsoever. There were times where I really felt like I needed to either escape or take a long break, because there have been some mental trials, and maybe that's because of how quickly it grew, or I'm not sure what that is, but it has been grueling. There's been some times where I really was hoping to find a back door, but I'm glad we didn't.
Yeah. Well, the two of you have a great, great story of persistence, innovation, building on your dreams, showing people what's possible. And we use it as examples all the time of a way of how you can be successful as a small business. You should be very proud of yourselves, and what you've been able to accomplish. And it's saying a lot when in just 14 years you can become as important as you are in the industry you're in, and that you haven't run out of ideas. So it's a great story. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for all the tips and resources SCORE has given to us and all the support you guys have given to us. So thank you as well.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you. And thank you to our listeners. If you want to hear additional episodes, you can go to our website at biztalkwithscore.com, and we'll be talking to you next week. Thank you very much.